AAPT was one of the early telecommunications companies competing in the Australian mobile phone and mobile data market. When a client signed up to the AAPT service, they were either given or referred on the website to terms and conditions for the contract. The contract was a consumer contract. It was a contract between AAPT and an individual consumer with a mobile phone. Now, at the time, Victorian legislation included provisions prohibiting what were called unfair terms in consumer contracts. That legislation no longer exists, but these days the Australian consumer law includes a provision, section 23, which also prohibits unfair terms in consumer contracts. So this case can help us understand the Australian consumer law provision. Section 24 of the Australian Consumer Law says that a provision in a consumer contract is unfair if it would cause a significant imbalance in the parties' rights and obligations under the contract. Section 25 then gives a range of examples of things that are likely to be unfair, including terms that allow one party but not the other to either vary or terminate the contract. Unfortunately for AAPT, this is pretty much exactly what their contract allowed them to do. They were allowed to change the contract at will, and they were allowed to suspend their own performance of the contract and then charge a reconnection fee if they decided to allow the service to commence again. President Morris said, "It is apparent that a term in a consumer contract is to be regarded as unfair if it causes a significant imbalance in the parties' rights and obligations arising under the contract. It is apparent that the significant imbalance must be to the detriment of the consumer, and it is apparent that in determining whether a term causes a significant imbalance in the parties' rights and obligations, one must have regard to all the circumstances." The Victorian legislation included consideration of the concept of good faith in the consumer contract, but this requirement has disappeared from Australian consumer law, most likely because it seems in this case to have provided more confusion than assistance. It remains the case, though, that under Australian consumer law, if a company imposes unfair terms in a consumer contract, those unfair terms will not be enforceable. In this case, AAPT took steps to change the contract before the matter even got to the tribunal.